Alright, so here's my solution for getting this seal out. I actually took a really fine, sharp punch, and I punched a couple of little holes in the actual wall of the seal. Now, of course, this destroys the seal, but I don't care because I am not going to reuse this seal. And then the idea is if I can get the punch, this punch underneath there, I can actually pry this thing out. All right, well, I got the hole in there. So the other thing that sometimes works is threading a little screw, sheet metal screw, into the hole, and then grabbing the head of the screw. Oh, forgot to hit the record button again. Well, anyways, what I did was I tapped in this self-tapping screw far enough so that the first thread's bit on the point, and then I threaded it in so it was in there good, and then I used pliers and used this as a fulcrum and basically just pried that out, and it popped right out. So we'll call that a dramatic reenactment there. Alright, just about supper time. There's the new seal. I'm just going to find myself the perfect size socket to use as a seal installation tool. That's exactly what I didn't want to happen. That looks good. All right, so I'm putting the alternator back on, and looks like I'm not going to have any clearance issues as far as that excess potting compound that flowed out. But I am going to put a little bit of blue thread lock on these screws as I put them back in, because I see evidence right there that there was blue thread lock just a little bit on these last time they were put in. Probably not a bad idea. I forgot to clear out the spots here where the pawning compound was interfering with. But I can do that actually with it in place with these other two screws, since I already got the thread lock compound on there. Well, I gotta tell you, when I first took the flywheel off of this thing, I was a little freaked out because I thought this was just a spline shaft, and I was like, are you kidding me? Are you telling me that there's several different ways that this flywheel could go onto the shaft? How the hell am I supposed to figure out how to retime this thing? But now, upon closer examination of the flywheel and the shaft, I see that it's splined all the way around except for this area right here where they skip one spline and leave a flat, so that the flywheel is in fact keyed to the crankshaft. That makes a lot more sense, because there's a label on the flywheel that shows the position of top dead center. Well, obviously, if you could put the flywheel on any old way, that wouldn't make any sense. So that little mystery at least is solved. So now I can go about with the next step, which is going to be putting the flywheel and the timing belt back on. I did not purchase a new timing belt, because the cheapest price I found for the belt was like $30 plus shipping. And the timing belt that I have, although it is old, I do not believe it is original. And when I give it the old, fold test there, I don't see any cracks. It actually looks like it's in pretty good shape, so I think this was probably replaced not as long ago as I thought initially. So again, with this timing belt goes, oh darn it, I just Loctited the screws for the stupid alternator and just realized the timing belt has to go on first. I thought there was a slot for it to go in under here. There's a slot over here for it and a slot over here, but there's actually a boss right here that this screws into that's in the way. So anywho, the timing belt has to go on before the alternator. As I was saying, timing belt has to go on before the alternator because the timing belt runs through these two openings right here. Now, I'm going to leave the timing belt off of the distributor gear for the time being so that I can slide it in far enough that way so it won't interfere as I install the flywheel. But first, got to put the alternator back on. Okay, as I just mentioned, the flywheel can only go on one way. So, easier said than done. Okay, that's not working, so I'm going to try plan B, which is I'm going to pull the belt up here. I'm surprised at all if this had something to do with why they changed the design of this thing to eliminate this belt altogether. Alright. Potting compound might be sticking out just a little bit too far on this side. Well, I did shave off a little bit of potting material, but I think it's still the belt's the issue here, because when I push down on it, you can see the belt moving up right here. That's a dead giveaway that I'm pinching that belt in there where it shouldn't be. So the trick is figuring out how the heck to get this belt to be out of the way. Huh. Yeah, this is going to be tricky. Maybe I can use this long screwdriver to help push it out of the way. Alright, trying a different approach. I'm holding the belt onto the pulley with my fingers as best as I can. And now pulling tension on the belt here so that if I take my fingers away, the belt should want to stay on. And now I lower it down, find that keyway. Should be on there. That looks like it's on the pulley okay. Well, I don't want to put it on there yet because I'm not lined up. This is still not going on though. Maybe I'm one tooth off. My alignment here? Oh, I'm a few teeth off. There we go. Alright, that was the trick there. Alright, so I'm still going to leave this off, and I'm not going to tighten this all the way down because I don't know whether or not I'm lined up correctly. Okay, there's a little nub that sticks out on the bottom part of this pulley right there. That has to line up with this. I know that. Right, like that. But when that's lined up with that, I've got to have the flywheel around over here, probably at top dead center. I'm going to have to refresh my memory. by looking at the, since I don't have a service manual, I'm going to look at my video when I took this apart and see how that looks. Anyways, so I can clearly see that the label's way over here on this side, so I got to spin this whole motor around. But I am going to leave the belt on here only because if I leave the belt off and I turn it, I'm worried that that might get screwed up, because I don't have the flywheel fully seated, because I need this clearance right here to take this belt off far enough so I can rotate this later. So I'm just going to bring this around, and I'm coming around now to top dead center according to the label, but it's a 4-stroke motor. No, it's not. It's a 2-stroke. Never mind. If this were a 4-stroke motor, I'd have to actually go and check and make sure that the number 1 cylinder is coming up towards top dead center. But because this is a 2-stroke without valves, conventional valves and everything, I don't have to worry about all of that. If it was a 4-stroke, the problem is that on a 4-stroke engine, the number 1 cylinder actually comes up to top dead center twice during the cycle. And on one of those cycles, it's not the point where you want ignition. It's actually the point at the end of the exhaust stroke, I guess would be the best way to explain it. Anyways, I don't have to worry about any of that because this is a 2-stroke and it doesn't have conventional valves. So, you know what? But I'm still going to check. So I've got a screwdriver inserted in the hole for number 1, spark plug hole for number 1. And I'm turning this until I feel it coming out, and it just stopped coming out and went back in. So right there is right before top dead center of cylinder number 1, which is the topmost cylinder. How do I know that? It's actually right on the head. It's cast in, the little number 1 is cast into the head, and so aren't the other ones, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And lo and behold, there's my piston number 1 TDC. Alright, so that's that. Now, I noticed that there are 2 black lines right here. One is 2 degree and one is 4 degree. Okay, so I'm not sure exactly which one of those 2 is supposed to correspond to that nub on here being lined up with this. I also made some black marks with a Sharpie right here, but that was a couple weeks ago, so I gotta go refresh my own memory on what I determined. But right now, all I could say with some bit of confidence is that I'm in the ballpark, so to speak, timing wise. Oh my goodness gracious, I got a headache from trying to figure this out. Turns out in my video I didn't really take a good shot of where this was lined up before I took it apart. And it turns out I guess that's not going to matter too much anyways, because there's a whole elaborate process to timing this thing in reference to throttle position and the amount of advance. So, and that process is loosely referred to as the link and sync. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to line this up, and this must have been here. So let's see. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. It's depending on what position I have this in. I still have these bolts loose. Alright, I better tighten those up before I forget. Alright guys, I wasn't quite sure what the heck I should do here, so what I ended up doing was I went out to the boat and I got this top cowling or top piece here that was off when I got the motor, and the reason I got it is because it has a sticker here and there's a line right here that says piston number 1 top dead center. It's a big thick line. Alright, so I noticed that if I put this in position, there's a space spacing this over here, but if I just hold this in position, I notice that that black line right there, if I bring the big black line on the flywheel that says TDC, and I line that up with this line that says TDC, okay, and by the way, that's 2 degrees apparently before top dead center. Anyways, so if I bring this over, what I did was I brought that over until that lined up, just like that. Those 2 lines are lined up, and there's actually a line on the casting here too. I guess if the decal goes away, this line right here is to be more permanent. You know, purpose was to have this be more permanent in case the decal goes away over time. So I've got that lined up now, and that's when this little nub on the distributor pulley lines up almost perfect with this little protrusion on the casting right here. So I think that's how I had this. I think that's how this was when I took it apart. Now I'm still going to have to time this. I'm not going to rely on that being correct. I don't know whether or not it was correct when I got the motor. And you've got several adjustments here, 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 and here. There's also a stop screw here. So I'm definitely not out of the woods, and I wouldn't want to start this motor right now. I think, if I'm not mistaken, starting the motor with the timing off could possibly damage the motor. So I'm positive on that, but I just noticed that more than one thread that I read about timing this thing talked about some of the precautions you have to do, you know, take into account when you're timing it. One of the precautions is not to start this motor until you've timed it statically, and then there's all different kinds of versions and advice on how to time it statically, but pretty much all of them center around the process of actually having all of the electrics hooked up and having the spark plug grounded, the number 1 spark plug grounded, and literally rotating the distributor until the spark plug fires. And that's going to be a whole involved thing, so I'm not going to get into that right now. Well, mainly because I have no idea how to do it. I just briefly read up about it. One of the versions, the guy actually rotates the flywheel, but then in the other versions they talk about, no, you rotate the distributor. And one valid point was brought up that it could be dangerous to rotate the flywheel, especially if the other spark plugs are still in the holes, because the engine could fire. So anyways, alright, so I'm going to tighten this little screw, because I think that's going to be my jumping off point as far as the alignment goes. I hope. Hey everybody, I've been doing a lot of reading up different forums and also watching some videos about the link and sync procedure, and also just basically verifying timing and things like that on these old inline 6 Mercuries. And so one of the first things I wanted to do is I wanted to try and verify whether or not my timing mark is correct. Now I talked about initially when I took this flywheel off, I was worried because it was a spline shaft. I thought, wow, it seems like I could probably put this on any number of ways. But then when I went and reassembled it, of course, I found out that no, it's actually got a spot on the shaft where they didn't cut the splines, which creates a key which positively locates the flywheel on the crankshaft. So I can't really put this on wrong, so to speak. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and still check out this timing situation on here, the timing marks, because it's kind of weird. I got something I don't quite understand here with the timing marks. And let me show you that. All right, but as long as I have the camera over here on this side, let me show you real quick the setup that I've got here, which is I've got a large cant twist clamp holding one of my magnetic indicator stands. The problem is that this whole body, the crankcase, the head and everything is either aluminum or an aluminum alloy apparently, so nothing will stick to it. So I don't really have any flat surfaces to put the stand on anyways. So I just clamped the stand there and figured out a way to, kind of a convoluted way to get this set up so that I've got my Mitutoyo dial indicator down the hole into and touching the piston. Now, when you do a procedure involving a dial indicator for top dead center on a motor like this, there's actually an adapter that they make that threads into the spark plug hole apparently, and makes this job a lot easier. Here I had to do it this way. I actually also had to put an extension rod on my indicator. One of the things I don't like is that the end of the indicator rod, it's got a rounded nose to it, which normally wouldn't be a problem except for the fact that the tops of these pistons aren't flat. They've got a dome to them. They've got a little interesting shape to them. So that I can't get exactly on there, but as long as I stay on the same location as it's going up and down, I can still see the total displacement of the piston as it's moving up and down. All right, now then, as for the part I just don't quite understand on this thing. Okay, so here on the flywheel, we have a sticker. And oftentimes, apparently, this sticker is not present, which creates a little bit of a headache for people. This sticker, okay, actually has notation right here. It says cylinder number 1, max spark. So I'm assuming that's this large black line right here, which is 27 degrees. And actually, we're not going to set that to 27 degrees. We're going to set that, I think, around 25. And that has to do with the fact that 27 degrees was taking into account older fuels, and that modern mid-grade octane fuel, which is what I'm learning seems to be the best choice for this motor. If you run it at 27 degrees advance at full throttle, what you end up with is potential for apparently melting your pistons. So that doesn't sound good. But I'm getting off the subject. Okay, so we got 27 degrees, and then I see another thick black line. It says 23. Another thick black line. It says 21. Then, as we come over this way, we rotate it. You'll see there's this thick black line right here that apparently it says piston number 1, but then over here it says TDC. So are they saying piston number 1 top dead center is the thick black line? If that's the case, why are there 2 thick black lines? But if I look at right above the thick black lines, I see 2 degrees and 4 degrees. So I think what they're saying is that when this thick black line is lined up with the pointer, we're at 2 degrees before top dead center, and that when the left thick black line is on the pointer, we're at 4 degrees before top dead center. And then there's a thin line right before it. You can barely see it, but that actually says 0 degrees. And then to the right it goes 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So that would be past top dead center over here. So keeping that in mind, I would have expected, because I already did kind of a quick test here, I would have expected this 0 line to line up with the timing mark when the indicator verifies that I am in fact at top dead center. But I'll try it again right now, but I don't think that's the case. One thing to keep in mind is that due to the geometry of the way the connecting rod connects to the bottom of the piston and then connects to the crank, and because of the fact that when the piston's at top dead center, there's a brief duration of rotation where the piston actually it's right at that point of between being all the way up and getting ready to come back down again. there's that brief period of rotation where the piston's actually not moving up and down, but the crankshaft can actually rotate. Okay, so I hope I'm kind of making that clear, but essentially there's a little duration of rotation out of this 360 degrees that the indicator is actually not going to move. So I believe that I want to pick the middle point between when it's stopped moving up and started moving down. Okay, so hopefully that's clear enough. So I'm always rotating in the same direction. Okay, so now I've got this long rod in there, and this is a long reach indicator. You see it's got the sub dial there. So it allows me the luxury of actually having it on the piston a lot sooner than if it were a situation where I had a regular indicator that had a very short throw. So I'm coming around. I know I'm getting close. So right there, I just rotated it a crack, and it's right there. I just rotated it a couple of degrees, and it stopped moving. There's a couple more degrees, and it stopped moving. There's a couple more degrees, and it stopped moving. Still not moving. And now there it is right there on its way back down. Okay? So if I back up, and of course that's the other thing too, there may be slack, there may be some play, but I don't know about the condition of wear of the connecting rod bearings on this engine. There may be a little bit of play in there. So I'm going to back up, and I'm going to come back forward again. Actually, I could actually see if there's any play by just rocking it here, and actually it looks pretty good and tight. That's good. I'm going to come back up. So that's about 30 was where it stopped. I'm going to give it a little bit of a, 32. Oh, it was a little past that maybe. Okay, so right about there, we should be pretty darn close to that top dead center or 0 degree mark lining up with the pointer. And herein line lies the problem. There's this little mark right here and this little mark right here. They're not lined up, but that could be, I might be just one tooth off with the belt. That's not my big concern right now. My big concern is that if you notice, the TDC, the 2 and the 4 degree marks are way the heck over here. Okay? So if it's supposed to line up with here, that's wrong. But the interesting thing is, the timing mark that everybody talks about when they're timing these engines is actually on this cover. Okay? Again, we've got another sticker there, another label that often goes missing. And apparently on some of these covers, this little hard embossed indicator line right here doesn't exist. On mine, not only does it exist, but it actually lines up with the black mark on here that actually says piston number 1 TDC. Okay? And then 4 degrees is here, so 2 degrees is in between there. There's 10, yada, 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 and we got all the way out to way over here. So cylinder number 1 max spark, it looks like that might be at 20 degrees, if that's referring to that. But that's nothing. The problem is that when I put this cover on, now granted it's not perfectly aligned because I'm missing this little rubber spacer here is missing on this side, but I can get it pretty darn close to lined up just by looking down the top here and eyeballing this hole so that it lines up with that hole. Well, guess what happens? Here's my line on this sticker way over here that says TDC. Okay? And I don't know if you can see it from the camera angle, but here's the line on this that says TDC. They don't even line up at all. So something's wrong. I don't understand what's going on. I don't know whether or not this is not the original flywheel and that I should be completely ignoring this sticker, or whether or not we're dealing with a situation that maybe this cover's not original and we should be ignoring this. We get a little hole right here, an oval-shaped hole to look right down here. And something tells me that that oval-shaped hole is there, I bet, to look down at that mark, that little nub mark thing. Sure enough, that hole is perfectly positioned so I could look at that little nub. Then we get this hole here, that seems pretty useless. Doesn't really look at anything. Well, actually it does look at some, you can look at some teeth, but that doesn't really tell you anything. So, I'm kind of at an impasse here. Because right now this is not jiving at all with what my indicator's telling me the piston's doing.